Hello, hello, welcome back to Loki's Librarian. If you are new here, welcome. I am your librarian, Katrina, and on Sundays I do a thing called Books and Booze, where I review a book and mix up a cocktail. We are now in January 2025, and this month I am looking at psychology, starting with the latest book by Jordan B. Peterson, We Who Wrestle with God, Perceptions of the Divine. The accompanying cocktail is from another book. This one here, I don't actually have the book. I have it on Kindle, so I'm just going to throw up a picture here. Cocktails with God by David Triemert. I hope I'm saying his name correctly. This cocktail is an act of God, which is one shot each of 151 rum and dark rum, 2 ounces each of orange juice and pineapple juice. So let's do this. A shot is 1.5 ounces. 151 rum is overproof rum, meaning it's very, very strong. It's about 75% alcohol. This one it says 75.5% alcohol by volume. So it's that's why you're cutting it with so much fruit juice. You get quite hammered off of this one. Let's do this anyways. So I have been a fan of Dr. Peterson since his reaction to Kathy Newman led to this viral meme right here, right? And I've seen it all over the place. First saw it and I thought, okay, that's freaking funny. What is that from? Found the interview and went, oh yeah, this guy's freaking brilliant. And that was no sarcasm, genuinely brilliant. And so I started following him on social media, stalked his YouTube channel for a bit. I've read the 12 Rules for Life and 12 More Rules for Life. I have not read Maps of Meaning, although I have it on Audible, so I should probably just listen to it. And then, of course, this book. Now, Peterson, fortunately for all of us, has a YouTube channel. I've had in my write-up. That's not going to make sense when you read this, because he still has a YouTube channel. Has a YouTube channel that was quite popular before all this went down, which is fortunate, because it remains active and popular. And you just know the Google gods would have throttled the algorithm on his YouTube channel if it hadn't already been making them money hand over fist because of its popularity. God, there's so much rum in this. So much rum. But it was, and so we still have it. On his channel, he has 2 playlists particularly that I think play into this. The psychological significance of the biblical stories, and the second playlist is Biblical Series Exodus. And basically, We Who Wrestle with God is an expansion on the ideas he provided in both of those series, both of which are outstanding. I've watched them both, and it might actually be time to rewatch them because they're very good. Here we go. Along with his Maps of Meaning series. He actually does reference some stuff from there because he talks about Pinocchio. Pinocchio is, oh no, there we go, perennial favorite of his because there's a lot of deep meaning in there. A lot of deep meaning. So he comes back to that quite a bit. I feel like I should have, I don't know, had some water before starting this because I just brushed my teeth and this might taste a little funky to start with, toothpaste, orange juice. Not a good happy combination. He really is a fascinating lecturer. If you haven't seen his YouTube channel, highly recommend it. It's fascinating. Now, specifically in We Who Wrestle with God, he is looking at the 5 books of the Torah, which is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, primarily concentrating on Genesis and Exodus. He does reference Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, but they're kind of more glossed over in like the second to last chapter. It's like a rehash of everything that happened, right? With a couple of other biblical laws thrown in. Now, it's not just the old, let's see, for those of you who don't know, who are not, biblical scholars, the 5 books of the Torah are also included in the Christian holy doctrine. In the Old Testament, they're known as the Pentateuch. Penta means 5, Tuk from Tukos, meaning vessel or scroll. And I had to Google that one because I didn't know what Tuk meant. It means something very dirty in, I think, Scotland or France or something like that. Oh, wait, this has to get stirred up. It fit perfectly in my Margaritaville mug, so that's what we're going with. Yeah, the Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy kind of glosses over and basically combines in one chapter where he talks about the fallout of the Israelites' long trek through the desert. The last chapter, he ends with Jonah and the whale, which was interesting since Jonah, according to BibleStudiesTools.com, is only a minor prophet in the Old Testament. So you definitely roll into the Christian Bible here. It's not just the Torah. He includes Old Testament. It's the Old Testament and then the Bible stories, right? But Jonah was only a minor prophet, and because Dr. Peterson never half-asses anything, throughout the entire book are quotes from Scripture, all the books of the Bible, not just Jonah. He quotes Book of Ruth, Matthew, Lucas, John, Joshua, and bolsters to bolster and support the points he's making. I mean, if it's in the Bible, he's probably referenced it in some way. He goes into Revelations. That's definitely not the Torah. That point, and all of this is done to bolster and support the point that he's making, that point being that the Bible, as one of the foundational texts of Western civilization, is being ever relegated to myth and thus comfortably ignored by those of us who are living 2,000 to 5,000 years removed from the happenings therein, right? Now, this is not to say that Peterson is saying these events actually truly happen exactly as laid out in the Bible, and that the Bible should be taken literally. He's not saying that at all. And in fact, he kind of says the exact opposite, that collectively, we as a people used to understand the lessons contained in the Bible. These stories have deeply important psychological implications, and cutting ourselves off from these stories is having a profound effect on all of us as a society psychologically. Let's try this. It's okay. I don't think it's just the toothpaste. It's the pineapple. It tastes, I don't know. I feel like we should throw some grenadine in there, maybe a couple of cherries to really punch it up, but it's okay. So let's start with Genesis. I mean, the very beginning, right? Go all the way back to the beginning, Genesis, when God creates the heavens and the waters, and day and night, all the animals, and of course, Adam and Eve. Now, literalists, and he even quotes Richard Dawkins in here because I think he's irritated / possibly disgusted with Dawkins. Definitely irritated, like that comes across. And I do have a book by Dawkins that I'll read sometime the next year. Wait, we're in 2025. I'll read this year sometime. Let's see. Literalists argue, sorry, I went off track there. Literalists argue the ridiculousness of Adam and Eve leaving the Garden of Eden, immediately give birth to 2 sons, Cain and Abel, and then those sons find more people and propagate the earth. Now, parables and fables are not literal. They were never meant to be literal. I mean, think of Aesop's fables, right? With the rabbit and the hare. I mean, nobody, or the ant and the cricket. The ants and the cricket, right? You know, toil hard, work diligently, prepare for what's coming. That's what the ants do. The cricket or the grasshopper plays all day long and then ends up starving to death. And of course, Disney makes it this happy little thing where the grasshopper comes in and entertains the ants at the end of it all. But realistically, the story of that is work diligently, prepare for the future so that when the hard time comes, you're not struggling. That's the point of the ant and the grasshopper, the tortoise and the hare. The hare is so sure and so confident of his abilities that he just kind of fucks around all day, and then the hare, or the tortoise, who slowly plods along, putting one foot in front of the other, beats him across the finish line. Tap my microphone. So those are fables. They're not meant to be taken literally. They're meant to provide information and knowledge that you can incorporate into your own life. And that's what the Bible is supposed to do. Information and knowledge you can incorporate into your own life. They're meant to teach you something. So what do we learn from Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden? We learn, or at least I learned, interestingly enough, that reading through the creation of earth and sky, water, the creation of all the creatures, man and woman, is basically the story of evolution. Right? The Bible does not, in fact, contradict evolution, and evolution does not contradict the Bible. I mean, think about it. The earth was, a big ball of gas first, 4 million years ago, however many millions of years ago we were. Then slowly life evolves. Now, in the immediacy of living 2,000 to 5,000 years ago, when these stories were first told, all of this is said to happen in a week, right? The first day God did this, the second day God did this, the seventh day God rested, blah, blah, blah. But really, to an all-powerful God, 1 billion years can pass like that, or a single day. Man and woman being born from the floodwaters, or in this case created after the waters recede from the creation of the firmament, it's a very common global myth. I mean, according to worldhistoryedu.com, quite a few beliefs come from being born after the flood. I do know Norse mythology believes that, and there was a flood because Audumla, am I thinking this right? Yeah, was licking the salt lick basically, and there was a flood from that, and then Odin Vilive created man and woman from Ask and Embla, ash tree and ebony tree. Been a while. It's time to reread those myths. We're gonna do that this year. Peterson acknowledges the importance of other myths, not just the Bible. I mean, he does cite Egyptian, Babylonian, Mesopotamia, I think Sumeria. I think he mentions Zoroastrianism. He definitely references Norse myth, although not the creation myth. He talks about, I know he goes into Tao. I remember reading Tao in there somewhere. There's not all of these stories are universally human, and the Bible just kind of encapsulates that. They're universally human. These stories exist throughout human culture. So it's not about God per se. It's about aiming up. Always aim up, lest you slide into the chaos of hell and dwell there forever. And we're going to come back to what exactly hell means. Peterson discusses the importance of listening to the still small voice inside of you, which is your conscience, right? And some people's conscience goes seriously astray. I'm not going to I'm not going to like give examples, but y'all could probably think of some, especially if you read this book, you'll definitely be able to think of some people whose conscience has gone astray. Fuck Jimmy Carter. The reason the 10 Commandments are top 10 are because of their overall importance to living a good life rather than a life of remorse and regret, right? Worship me before all others. Keep aiming up, all right? Don't get sidetracked by things that are not important. Honor thy mother and thy father, all right? Well, these are the people who gave birth to you. Now understand, I'm not saying, and certainly Peterson isn't saying if your parents are abusive assholes, you should, do everything you can to help them. He's saying in a perfectly ordered world, your parents are worthy of respect and honor rather than a lot of what we see these days. I can think of a couple of examples in my own family where honor is not happening. I'm not going to go there right now. It's not relevant. Not to this. I did learn interestingly enough the third commandment: you shall not take the name of the Lord the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Now, I think most people were actually raised to think that means don't swear, keep your language clean. Turns out God doesn't give a flying fuck if your language is clean. A little goddamn it never actually hurt anybody. It's the fake Christians who have something to worry about. Those who claim to be living a biblical good life, yet are only paying lip service to the word of God. That's what taking his name in vain means. It's not, I never swear. It's saying you're a friend to people while secretly stabbing them in the back. It's gossiping. It's the government stopping Christians from feeding the poor by pouring bleach over their food, for example. It's not a very Christian act. Not the Christians, the government, just as an example. That's what taking his name in vain means. And who knew? Not me. Adam and Eve discusses the danger of feminine pride in being compassionate to the point of suicide, which just kind of made me even more excited for Gad Saad's upcoming book, Suicidal Empathy, which we still don't have a release date on, but I am looking forward to it. This comes about by Eve's willingness to listen to the serpent. Don't listen to those who mean you harm. All right? I mean, how do you determine, how do you determine who means you harm? Well, it's interesting that according to dictionary.com, serpent has two meanings: a snake or a wily, treacherous, or malicious person. Okay? If what they're telling you makes you feel immediately happy, it might actually be a trick. All right? It's not necessarily a good thing. Pay attention to that. I'm trying really hard to follow Dr. Peterson's advice and not name specific examples, but I'm pretty sure we can all think of people who are specific examples of a wily, treacherous, or malicious person. I'm just saying. Biblically, the serpent is a metaphor for Satan, but I saw that second definition and immediately thought of Crowley from Good Omens. It was very, very smooth transition how he went from a snake to a wily, treacherous, or malicious person, thus encompassing both meanings of serpent.
It was a nice day. All the days had been nice. There had been rather more than 7 of them so far, and rain hadn't been invented yet. But the storm clouds gathering east of Eden suggested that the first thunderstorm was on its way, and it was going to be a big one.
Now, for his part, Adam, interestingly enough, immediately denies any culpability, right? He blames God for his eating the apple. You gave me this woman. This woman who fell to temptation, you gave her to me, so it's your fault I ate the apple. He just denies any part of his own guilt in this, which God, being God, goes, too bad. You chose to eat that. I did not make you. You do still have a modicum of free will, and rather than refusing, you chose to eat it. Bye. And he kicks them both out of the Garden of Eden. And once out, they procreate, eventually giving birth to 3 children. All right, the first 2 are the next important story, Cain and Abel. The third one is Seth, and he's born after Abel, kind of to replace Abel as the good son, if you will. Cain was the eldest, interestingly enough. Peterson breaks down the psychology of sibling rivalry through the story of Cain and Abel. That's interesting. And how and why Cain's sacrifices were rejected while Abel's were accepted, making him God's favorite. I mean, Abel goes all in. Right? He doesn't half-ass anything. He goes all in, does his absolute best, gives the best to God, and Cain does not. Quite simply. He only works with a half heart. He half-asses it. Boy, I'm using that phrase a lot this review. He half-asses his work and his sacrifice, giving like the second best to God. And God even tells him, hey, I'm rejecting your sacrifice because this clearly is not the best you can do. Do better. And then rather than taking that constructive criticism and doing better next time, Cain gets it in his head that if he kills the competition, aka his brother Abel, God will accept him next time. This does not go according to plan. Cain in turn is cast out. Peterson follows that rabbit down the hole and explains how Cain founded Canaan. Not bad. God explains Babel, the tower that was built there. Babel is basically Babylon. And it was odd because he's discussing the horror of Babylon. All that is the negative feminine, and my brain went to a single, well, like 3 or 4 verses from the Locusena, aka the flighting of Loki, Snorri Sturluson, right? Freya, the Locusena is the gods are having a big party. There's also shades of Sleeping Beauty with Maleficent just showing up here. The gods are having a party. They did not invite Loki, and Loki shows up anyway and starts calling them out for their bad behavior. I kind of read the Locusena, and people get really bent out of shape about this one and consider Loki as evil because of this. I think he was holding a mirror up to the gods and saying what they were doing wrong, and the gods took exception to that, and from there Ragnarok occurs. But specifically, Freya's like, hey, we don't want you here, and Loki says, be silent, Freya, for fully I know thee, sinless thou art not thyself. Of the gods and elves who are gathered here, each one as thy lover has lain. False is thy tongue, Freya spoke, and soon shalt thou find that it sings thee an evil song. The gods are wroth, and the goddesses all, and in grief shalt thou homeward go. Loki spoke, be silent, Freya, thou foulest witch, and steeped full sore in sin. In the arms of thy brother the bright gods caught thee, when Freya her wind set free. And he's saying you slept with everybody up to and including your brother. You are not blameless in this. I mean, she is a witch. Like, famously, Freya was the first witch, right? In Greek mythology, it's Hecate. Norse mythology, it's Freya. She was a well-known seether. Much was made of this passage in the pagan community, that Loki was slut-shaming Freya. It's of note that Snorri Sturluson himself maintains Freya was faithful to her husband. Also of note is Freya's famous necklace Brisingamen. All right, what's famous about this, she's seen it in like any depiction of her, she's seen as wearing it. So much so it's like a trademark for her. When Thor pretends to be her, cross-dresses as Freya to fool the giants, he borrows Brisingamen. It's so a part of her identity. Famously, she paid for it by having sex with the dwarves who crafted it, selling herself for gold. So the horror of Babylon reminded me of Freya, and I feel like there's a parallel, and that she's not going to be too happy with me for drawing this conclusion. Casual sex is addressed elsewhere in this book, during the Exodus breakdown specifically, where some of the faithless Israelites lay with loose women. If I had to hazard a guess, the prohibition against casual sex has more to do with the spread of disease and less to do with slut-shaming. Like, truly. A lot of the parables, like don't eat shellfish, it's been long speculated that the prohibition of that against that was against food poisoning. How long is shellfish going to be good for when it's, not fresh out of the sea? Well, the best way to avoid getting sick from that is to just not eat it. Ladies, I do have a serious question here, though. I mean, if you are so casual with yourself, why would you expect a man to treasure you? And I ask this as someone who has had her share of casual sex, right? I am a child of the sexual revolution. Not born of that, but born of parents from that. I have had my share of casual sex, and then, like the, famous tweet says, caught the last chopper out of Nam when I lucked into my husband. Have a care with yourselves. You're worth more than a cheap dicking down. On the other side of the scale, Peterson does address incels. He is not, in fact, slut-shaming anybody, but he does address incels. Refer back to Cain. Do better, and better again. Make yourself into a worthy partner by constantly aiming up and up again. This goes for both men and women. This is not simply aimed at men, but more at that evil voice inside of men who say that they deserve a woman just because. Well, no, you don't. All right? Women are picky maters. They've had to be historically, biologically, evolutionarily. We've had to be picky maters because we need to know that whoever we mate with is going to support our children. And that was all the way up until, the sexual revolution, at which point all hell broke loose. This book was excellent. It gave me lots of food for thought and refocused me for my next bit. I mean, after the presidents, I was going to look at world religions. It turns out there's only about 12 really major world religions. So that, if I wanted to just do one religion a month, I'd be done inside of a year. But there's more than that. It's not the religions. Rather than narrowing it down, I'm broadening that field to include global myths. I mean, religions are certainly going to be included. They have to be, because so much religion has built around global myths. I mean, Peterson has outlined quite well for me what kind of lessons can be learned from foundational texts. How can you extrapolate from that and look for what's actually being taught? It's not necessarily just a story, right? I was going to start with Genesis. I sort of feel like I can push the Bible out a bit now, because Peterson already did an outstanding job explaining what all this means psychologically. So yeah, I'm going to look at global myths. I want to see what can be extrapolated from those as lessons rather than just a story. And understand, fiction is a fantastic reading point, because fiction will teach you empathy. It teaches you to put yourself in somebody else's shoes, right? Good fiction is going to have you be in the shoes of the hero, which means you're always aiming up. I love fiction. But fiction starts with myth, which became the foundational texts of society. So I'm going to read those. God, while excellent, this book was absolutely fucking terrifying because my God, he never, not once ever, calls out any one person, thing, or social movement. I'm not going to finish this in time. I mean, nothing. But if you watch the news, if you're on social media, if you talk to basically anybody, it's obvious just how much trouble we as a society are in. And I think that's why he included the last chapter on Jonah. 9 chapters, the first 8 of which are dedicated to the Pentateuch. And then Jonah. Jonah, why Jonah? Jonah is a minor prophet, all right? Such a small thing, Jonah and the whale, right? Jonah's supposed to preach to the people of Nineveh, and he gets scared because they are so corrupt, and instead he flees and ends up being eaten by a whale. And then when he agrees to do as God asked him to do, which is to preach to the people of Nineveh, he spit up on the shores of Nineveh. Odd tale, right? I mean, who the hell... I mean, theoretically, yes, a person could be swallowed whole by a whale, but no, they would not, in fact, be able to live inside the whale for 3 days. Well, the whale is a metaphor for hell. He's dragged down to hell. He's kept from God's grace for 3 days until he agrees to do what God told him to do. Jonah is the importance of speaking the truth, not your truth. You don't have a monopoly on truth. Your truth could be a lie to yourself, to try and sell yourself as something you are not. And lying to yourself is the worst possible thing you can do, right? As Peterson says, hell is real, and it's not what you think. It's not burning a cauldron of boiling pitch while devils prick your backside with pitchforks. It's slavery under tyranny. Tyranny that you let happen by not speaking the absolute truth, by remaining silent, because silence was easier than dissent. It's Hitler, Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot, Che Guevara. It's totalitarianism. Hell is being cut off from the God source, whether that's the God of the Christians, or Yahweh, or Allah, Ahura Mazda from Zoroastrianism. Any of the Hindu caste. Hell is bad sex for bad-mouthing Freya on a book review. Goddess of love and sexuality. Sorry, Freya. The parallel was there, and it popped so immediately into my mind that I felt like I really needed to include that. Plus, the name of the channel is Loki's Librarian, so I kind of got to take my man's side on this. And a little bit of chaos prevents totalitarianism, and sometimes chaos is speaking the truth. And that's it for this week. If you liked what you saw, don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys next Sunday. Bye.